Welcome to another episode of The Village Show with me, Jack the Sound Sangoma. You already know what it is, man. This is episode 26. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for engaging with all our YouTube pages. Today, we got a very, very jam-packed show for you as always. You know, on our music video, we're gonna be, appreciating a music video by, on our music video appreciation, we're gonna be appreciating a music video by Aqualiskin Musimbi. This is an artist from Zambia who just released this song, I think a couple of months back. This is a very, very dope song with a lot of views on YouTube. Friend of mine from Zambia actually sent me this and said I must, check it out. And I felt like it was a good music video to actually review. And on our song of the week, before we get to the song of the week, on the topic of the week, we're going to be looking at the SONA, the South African State of Nation address with Mr. Ramaphosa. We're going to be breaking it down, some of the valuable things that he said, some of the things that he said from this year to last year, and we're going to be just breaking it down and looking at it as, we have to, as South African citizen. On our song of the week, we have Wave Rider and Stana Romeo. This is a song, a dope song that I had during the week. On our Kasi Superhero, we have Mr. Ivan Koza. And on our trailer watch, we're going to be watching a trailer for a movie called Shanty Town. That's going to be our village show today. Without me speaking a lot, let's get to it. Just like I said, today on the Village Show, on the video appreciation, we have a music video by Aqualiskin with a song called Msimbi. Without me saying a lot, let's play the music video.
Wabota musimbi musa ulinonede wabota musimbi musa ulinonede konipa nono luyano konipa nono luyano korektia korektia isa korektia korektia isa korektia korektia isa korektia korektia isa ya wino buso sifankula mutsifukushiu yomubili mwaba batatu mutsipiti amundipeka dansi kagwila musisi I promise that kupanga mayaya chupiti it's not free kachingi ako got the cheese I'm too sharp to speak yani yasegai if I touch you don't scream unkalazi I might pierce tonight the only wabota musimbi musa ulinonede wabota musimbi musa ulinonede konipa nono luyano konipa nono luyano korektia korektia isa 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 korektia mundipe mubiri ndishete musimbi korektia mundipe mubiri musimbi korektia mundipe mubiri ndishete musimbi korektia mundipe mubiri musimbi
Hey, is it making bounce?
Yo, yo, yo. Nano. Correctia, correctia Isa, 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 correctia Isa.
That's Aqualus Skin right there with the music video called Simbi. You know, as the music video there, we like the music video from Zambia. Shout out to Aqualus Skin. Make sure that you go and actually engage with his music. Make sure that you go and follow him on all of the social platforms. And keep on giving us the cool music. So when we're looking at the topic of the week, today we're going to be looking at the State of the Nation address, which happened this week, where Cyril Ramaphosa was addressing the nation. So we're going to be looking at some of the takeaways, what we think about some of the things that he said. If all some of those things are implemented, what does it mean for South Africa? What are some of the most important? So before we even get to, people thinking we're going to be talking about, the usual, EFF interrupting the SONA, attempting to actually stage a peaceful protest, as they say, and getting chased out by the security forces. I guess that's the biggest highlight of the SONA. But we're used to it by now, as this happens every year. We don't hate EFF. We like EFF. We like all the political organization for all of their agendas and what they're trying to do for people of South Africa. We're just happy that we got to hear the State of the Nation address by Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. So there's some points that I actually made when I was actually listening to it. So I listened to the State of the Nation address. So basically, one of the things that was really, really prevalent in what he said was the extraordinary measures for the energy crisis, the measures they're going to be taking, for the energy crisis. One of it, which is making, declaring the national state of disaster. So basically Ramaphosa declared a national state of disaster over crippling, power shortages that threaten the country economy and security, investing in government with additional powers to sign emergency procurement procedures faster and with less oversight. So basically they're making sure that whatever it needs that needs to be done when it comes to the energy crisis is done, because now there's not going to be any red tape standing in front of people in terms of trying to fix this. Extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary measures. That's what he said. The crisis dates back to 2008 but infested last year, and now power cuts up to 8 hours per day are affecting homes, factories and businesses across nation of 60 million. As now, if you're a South African, we don't have to remind you of how load shedding has been affecting us. It's something that we're living with. It's something that we're getting used to it. But we do hope that this gets fixed. So when Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa was speaking on his speech, there's a lot of promises and a lot of things that he spoke about, a lot of money that is willing to be, invested in this. As Ramaphosa said, without a reliable power supply, our effort to grow an inclusive economy that creates jobs and reduces poverty will not succeed. So these are some of the words from Mr. Ramaphosa himself. He talked about a couple of billions that are going to be, directed into making sure that the energy crisis in South Africa is dealt with. He talked about things like looking into different ways of generating energy, looking at nuclear, looking at solar, looking at wind, looking at all of these ways that can help South Africa in making sure that we get back, to having electricity all the time and staying away from load shedding. Another point that he made, which is a point that I believe that this point gets made every year, is fighting poverty and unemployment. Public anger has been mounting about a 33% unemployment rate, surging living costs, and the near collapse of government services in a number of towns. The South African president blamed the COVID-19 pandemic for worsening de-employment as a country lost 2 million jobs. Of course, we can't blame COVID. but some of those problems were problems that were persisting before even COVID. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that, in terms of making sure that, just saying that COVID played a part. I'm not going to say COVID didn't play a part. I think everybody saw that, with a lot of people losing their jobs, a lot of people kind of like, going home and not having anything to do. The pandemic negatively affected livelihoods and increased poverty, he said, while also claiming that about 1.5 million jobs were created between the third quarter of 2021 and 2022. So that's 500,000 jobs that were created in the third quarter of 2021 and that of 2022, which is some good news, some good stats that we're looking at, but there's still more that needs to be done. His government will continue to pay destitute South Africans the 350 social relief grant at the time when the rising cost of living is deepening poverty and inequality. So basically there's the 350 that people have been getting, which was, I thought was for COVID relief, is going to stay there for those people who are unemployed, to make sure that at least it supplement some of the stuff. When it comes to fighting poverty and unemployment, he talked a lot about, the government, efforts to actually create jobs. He talked about some jobs that are going to be created in the Home Affairs, where there's going to be some of the youth who are going to be digitizing some documents from from the olden days that were on paper, which is a good thing, but, that's not enough jobs. In the way I look at it, I feel like the government needs to get to a point where they need to understand it's going to be very difficult for them to create jobs if they're not creating factories, if they're not creating those places where people can be hired in big masses. If we start manufacturing, like he said, one of the departments or one of the industries talked about is the textile industry. If we bring back the textile industry and we start manufacturing clothes in South Africa, we can get a lot of people in the workforce. This is requiring a lot of idealists or a lot of business people who have these ideas to be funded so they can make jobs. I feel like government needs to position themselves, not in trying to make jobs, but funding people who can actually create all of these jobs. People who can come up with factories and companies that can hire people in bulk, making sure that our assembly lines, when it comes to manufacturing cars, is brought back, make sure that our railroads, are functioning, to make sure that goods are traveling up and down very, very easily, which will stimulate our economy, making sure that factories are being built where, food, because food security was one of the things that is, prevalent and is one of the things that needs to be talked about, making sure that communities are sustainable, by funding those communities and making sure that they run the communities. He spoke about the money of agriculture, that's going to be given to rural areas, especially those who are going to be, farming cannabis, as they passing the cannabis bill. We'll wait for that and update you guys on that when it comes to how that is going to be prevalent. I think he said $1 billion is going to be dedicated to funding those farms, as cannabis is going to be playing a big role, in the way I look at it in terms of fighting poverty and corruption. Poverty and unemployment is just a matter of empowering people who have big ideas to create all of these businesses that can be hiring people, in a very, very large scale. As much as government is trying to create these jobs, I think he talked about 12,000 jobs that are created at Home Affairs. It's a lot of jobs, but it's not enough for all of the youth that are unemployed. He spoke about, having a tax incentive for companies to hire young people. If they're hiring young people, they're going to have a tax incentive, because we have a very, very high number of unemployed youth, which I spoke about last week on the episode last week. That's another thing that the government seems to be looking to be tackling. As we know, sometimes, the speeches and everything is one thing else. The implementation is one thing else. The reason why I get engaged in this conversation and making it my point to actually understand these things is for us to be able to hold these people accountable. You can't hold somebody accountable if you don't have the information or if you don't understand what they really promised. As much as I listen, I will give you my own summary of what I think about the SONA, the State of the Nation address, what has been said. Like I said, some of the things that were said sounded really, really good if they implemented the way they're being said. I think the problem that we have most of the time with all of these things is just implementation. Another point that was very, very prevalent in the speech was corruption. Ramaphosa said most South African municipalities, 163 out of 257, were found to be ineffective and sometimes corrupt, leading to poor service delivery. That's a very, very dismal number. 163 out of 257 municipalities are either ineffective or corrupt, which is leading to poor service delivery. The government is implementing a number of interventions to address failures in local government level and improve basic service delivery. This includes enhancing the capacity of public representatives and officials, maintaining and upgrading local infrastructures, and invoking the powers of national government to intervene where municipalities fail to meet the responsibility. He added that integrity assessments will become a mandatory requirement for recruitment for the public service, and entry exams will be introduced. This is something good. This is something that we can look forward to. Again, if it's implemented very well, I'm looking at this from a good eye. I'm looking for this with a different perspective. Again, we're gonna report on this next year when this happens again to see how many of these things that he spoke about has been implemented. The introduction of entry-level exams and making sure that they look at people who become our councillors in local governments is very, very important, because some people are just there because they have connections. They don't really understand what it is to actually be running a community, making sure that our community stay self-sustaining. Even as a shadow of the state culture, a scandal in which the Guptas and the family of Indian businessmen with Ramaphosa's President Jacob Zuma to secure contracts without due process continue to loom over the current administration. Another point that he raised was women rights and employee empowerment. Ramaphosa promised significant more funding to be made available for the police, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the Special Investigated Unit in the country, with one of the highest sexual violence rates globally. Crime against women and children remain a deeply disturbing feature of our nation. All life, he said, promising to set up a specialized unit focusing on specific types of crime. The government also intends to direct at least 40% of public procurement to women-owned businesses to support female entrepreneurs. He also claimed that the complaints that calls to 10111, the emergency response line, went unanswered, will be addressed. Violent crime takes a heavy toll on every South African. Communities across our country live in fear for the safety of their families. This situation cannot continue and must not continue. That's what the president actually added. And he actually added into that by saying that they're going to be increasing the police force by employing more youth as police to help, with the crime that is going on. All in all, Mr. Ramaphosa was talking about hope and the nation of South Africa having resilience. We're getting to a point where our youth is getting tired, our nation is getting tired, but we keep on going. He made examples by people like Zakes Bantwini winning a Grammy, while we're still in a country that's battling all of these problems. He mentioned a lot of achievements from other people that are doing really great things, and he did point out some of the things that the government said they're gonna, deploy last year that they didn't, and some of the things that they did, but they're not really going at the speed that they thought they're not gonna go, and apologizing for some of those. So my summary when it comes to that, I felt like there was a lot of good things that were said. As always, most of the time we're looking at action plans. How are they going to actually implement this? For example, the hiring of the Minister of Electricity to overlook the state of the disaster when it comes to power. The hiring of the youth. Making sure that water supply is getting to the people. He mentioned people of Giyani too, in terms of a dam that's actually being built for them to have pure water or clean water. Some of these things are very, very good things, but we need, a speed up process in making sure that we fix this country. And when it comes to things like unemployment, when it comes to things like giving us network, giving us, cheap data, making sure that everybody has coverage. He even made a joke by whenever he calls his friends during December, they can't talk to him because they don't have network because they're at home. They still deal with the same problems that we deal with. I do believe and I pray that all of these problems get fixed, and whatever he spoke